6:17 a.m. The world changes in a single, invisible heartbeat. There is no flash, no explosion, only a pulse. Silent, instantaneous, untraceable to the naked eye. Across the United States, electricity dies as if someone has pulled the core thread from a vast, delicate web. Screens dim, motors freeze, circuits fail in perfect unison. And in that unnatural quiet, something irreversible begins. For the first 3 seconds, nothing looks wrong. A phone simply stops vibrating mid-notification. A radio stutters, then exhales a final breath of static. A commuter car coasts to a halt with its engine lifeless. The glow of streetlights fades like dying embers swallowed by dawn. At 30,000 feet, aircraft continue forward on momentum alone, but their digital navigation is suddenly blind. In hospitals, heart monitors freeze on the last beat they will ever display. The nation takes its final synchronized breath of the modern world. Most Americans do not yet understand what has happened. They wait for screens to reboot, for engines to click back to life, for signals to reconnect. They expect the hum beneath daily life to return at any moment. But it doesn't, and it won't. By 6:20 a.m., the silence grows stranger. Elevators hang motionless between floors. Substations stop transmitting along the grid. Air traffic control screens glow blank white. No aircraft, no data, no coordinates. Power plants fall out of sync, their delicate balance shattered. In kitchens, refrigerators hold their chill for now, unaware they will never cycle again. Traffic signals die at every major intersection, turning entire cities into stalled, confused sculptures of metal and expectation. The nation does not panic. Not yet. Panic requires information, and information has just disappeared. At 7 a.m., the country enters its first hour without power. It feels like an ordinary outage at first, a winter storm, a downline, a transformer failure. Phones remain dark, but people assume the network is temporarily overloaded. Cars refuse to start, but drivers imagine a mechanical glitch. Without sirens or alarms to signal crisis, millions cling to familiar explanations, but the world around them is shifting. Subtle details begin to break the illusion. A pilot in a descending aircraft watches his instruments freeze. A nurse smacks the side of an unresponsive defibrillator. A truck driver tries the radio in, only to hear endless static. A city block waits for lights that never turn green. A radio hobbyist deep in the Rockies rotates his dial through empty frequencies. Each one as silent as the last. At 8:12 a.m., he hears the first surviving whisper of truth, a fractured, shielded transmission confirming an EMP signature. He cannot share it with the nation. The nation cannot hear it. By 9 a.m., the pattern becomes undeniable. The internet does not return. The cell towers remain dead. Cars built within the last 2 decades stay unresponsive. Some hospitals switch to fading generator power. Others fall silent. ATMs will not turn on. Airports suspend all departures. Arrivals blind land without guidance, relying on pilot intuition and the last known vectors. At 9:41 a.m., the first whispered rumor of attack spreads in a downtown crowd. People exchange theories, each one built from fragments of fear. A few try to walk miles to work. Others gather outside buildings, searching for someone, anyone, who knows more than they do. No one does. By 10 a.m., the realization settles over millions of Americans like a shadow passing overhead. This is not a blackout. Blackouts are temporary. Blackouts have boundaries. Blackouts come with updates, alerts, explanations. This is different. The machinery of modern life hasn't paused. It has vanished. While civilians search for answers, the government moves in silence. Deep underground, hardened communication lines come alive with the hesitant pulse of emergency power. Inside NORAD, shielded systems identify the unmistakable signature of a high-altitude EMP. Continuity of government protocols activate with calm precision. Military satellites switch to protected frequencies. Strategic submarines surface for manual verification. The nation's defenses narrow their focus to one question. Was this the first strike, or will there be another? But none of this reaches the public. Not the warnings, not the analyses, not the truth. Civilian communication infrastructure is dead on arrival. For the first time in generations, the United States government knows something the population does not. The grid has not failed. It has been erased. Nightfall brings a country into a darkness it has not seen in over a century. No neon signs, no headlights cutting through traffic, no glow from distant windows. Cities become silhouettes of themselves, vast, silent shapes devoid of electric life. Without the humming blanket of modern light, the world feels larger, heavier, older. Footsteps echo farther. Whispers sound sharper. The sky reveals stars that electric glow once smothered. People gather outside simply because staying inside without light feels wrong, feels vulnerable, feels like waiting for something they cannot name. Candles appear in windows like signals from another era. The air grows colder. The silence thickens, and the collective realization deepens. This will not be fixed by morning. Not in a day. Not in a week. The world before 6:17 a.m. is gone. And in the darkness, the United States steps quietly into its first night of total blackout, a night without electricity, without certainty, and without a clear path back to the world that existed only hours before. Daybreak arrives without alarms, no vibrating phones, no morning news, no hum of refrigerators or air conditioners coming back to life, only the pale light of a silent country entering its second day without electricity. And with that light comes the first true consequence of an EMP. Need. Across the nation, water pressure drops before most people finish their morning routines. Faucets cough weak streams. Toilets fail to refill. Entire neighborhoods gather around sinks and tubs, tapping pipes as if sound alone could force water to return. They do not know that pumping stations rely on electric grids. Grids now dead, grids with no timeline for resurrection. By midday, refrigerators warm. Freezers soften. Milk spoils quietly behind sealed doors. Families open appliances out of habit, not yet understanding that once closed, they will never chill again. Grocery stores fill with people seeking reassurance, not resources. Shelves full the night before now feel fragile. Cash registers remain off. Credit cards useless. Payment systems frozen in digital stasis. Just a temporary outage, someone says, but their voice carries less confidence than fear. As hunger moves forward, hospitals fall backward. Generators, built for hours, not days, begin to sputter. Some still run, coughing out precious minutes of medical life. Others fail entirely. Insulin warms beyond safety. Ventilators sit as silent statues. Electronic medical records vanish, locking away the details of thousands of patients' lives. Surgeons operate by the thin light of emergency windows. Nurses write vitals by hand on scrap paper. Orderlies run down stairwells instead of elevators, carrying equipment meant to be moved by machines. At 3:14 p.m., a hospital in the Midwest becomes the first to declare full internal collapse. Several more follow before sunset. In a world built on electricity, the narrator's voice would say, medicine is the first to fall. Law enforcement faces its own unraveling. Radios crackle once, then die completely. Patrol cars sit motionless, modern engines as dependent on microchips as smartphones. Officers resort to bicycles, ATVs built before digital ignition systems, or simply walking. 911, the backbone of American emergency response, falls silent. Calls cannot be placed. Calls cannot be received. Now officers become messengers rather than responders. They walk from shop to shop, from home to home, repeating what little they know. Priorities shift from crime prevention to crisis containment. Every request becomes urgent. Every request becomes impossible. Communities realize that help is not coming. Not quickly. Not officially. Not in the way they once believed. By day 3, America begins to change. Not the land, not the sky, but the people. Some neighborhoods form circles of survival. Residents gather in parking lots and living rooms illuminated by candles. They pool water filters, distribute canned food, create shifts for night watch patrols. Gardens are planned, wells examined. Manual tools pulled from forgotten storage. A mechanic becomes as essential as a surgeon. A farmer becomes more valuable than a banker. These cooperative pockets stabilize. They do not thrive, but they endure. Other communities fracture. Gas stations become flashpoints. Pharmacies strip within hours. Arguments over water escalate into threats. Rumors turn to fuel. Someone whispers that another EMP is coming. Someone claims the government has fallen. Someone else swears it's all temporary. Just wait for the lights. But the lights do not return. And where fear replaces communication, cities begin to feel like containers of pressurized silence, ready to break with the slightest spark. The EMP did not break society, the narrator observed softly. It revealed what was already fragile. Meanwhile, buried bunkers and hardened military bases operate in a different timeline. Engineers work by floodlight, manually assessing damage to the grid. Convoys move slowly across states, guided by hand signals instead of digital maps. Each vehicle, each generator, each transformer is now a national asset. Civilian requests for aid outnumber available resources by tens of thousands. The government is not absent. It is simply outnumbered, overwhelmed, cut off from the very population it is trying to protect. By day 5, a new reality solidifies across the country. People stop expecting the internet to return. Stop checking phones for a signal. Stop assuming the government will speak through screens that no longer glow. The rhythms of daily life become anchored to daylight. Morning begins when the sun rises, not when alarms ring. Evening begins when the last streak of sunset melts into blackness. Communities that adapt continue functioning. Quietly, carefully, collectively. Those that cannot adapt slide downward into scarcity and tension. By day 7, the United States reaches the end of its first week without electricity. Streets are quieter. Shops remain closed. Food supplies thin. People move slower, speak softer, trust less. And yet, in some places, small embers of stability survive. Farmers prepare fields without machines. Parents teach children by candlelight. Radio hobbyists attempt to rebuild basic communication. Neighbors begin to understand that survival is not a solo act. It is a shared burden. Week 1 ends with no resolution, no miracle, no flicker of returned power, just a quiet awareness that the most difficult days are still ahead. And in the growing silence, a heavier question settles over the nation. If this is only the beginning, what will America look like when the second week arrives? The second week begins without expectation. No one waits for the lights anymore. No one stands beneath dead street lamps hoping for a spark. Across the United States, people wake not to alarms, but to the slow, pale glow of dawn spreading across a powerless world. And in that soft light, something shifts. The shock is gone. The denial is gone. Only reality remains. Morning routines become older, slower, deliberate. Water is collected before sunrise. Food is rationed in quiet groups. People speak less, listen more, and measure their days by the movement of shadows instead of the blinking LED digits that once defined their hours. America begins to accept what it has become, a nation living a century in the past, guided by nothing but discipline, memory, and the persistence of human instinct. Electric silence becomes ordinary, darkness becomes familiar, and in that familiarity, a strange kind of order begins to reappear. Not the technological structure that once scaffolded the country, but human structure built from cooperation and necessity. In these days, people rediscover time. Not digital time, but natural time. Sunrise as signal, sunset as boundary, and every moment in between a task to complete before the world goes dark again. On day 9, the turning point begins, not with an announcement, not with a broadcast, but with the quiet arrival of a military convoy to a rural substation. It moves slowly, each vehicle intact only because it predates the era of digital ignition, or because its components were hardened long before this event. The convoy's purpose is singular, to rebuild a fragment of the grid by hand. There are no computers to diagnose the damage, no digital schematics. Every wire, every transformer coil, every panel must be examined manually. Engineers work with tools older than the systems they are trying to resurrect. They move with calm precision, whispering to one another in low tones as if the silence around them has become sacred. Hours pass. The sun climbs and falls. The substation remains a carcass of steel until, piece by piece, it begins to breathe again. 4:22 p.m. A switch is thrown. A hum rises. A thin, trembling sound, nothing like the powerful roar of the grid that once spanned continents. But the hum grows. It gathers depth. It vibrates through the steel frame of the rebuilt transformer. And then it happens. A single row of lights ignites in a distant rural neighborhood. A soft glow in a world that had forgotten what artificial light looked like. People step into the street, shielding their eyes on instinct. Some cry. Some fall to their knees. Some simply stare, unable to speak. It is not brightness that moves them. It is memory, the recognition of a world they believe might never return. The hum of electricity becomes more than a technical achievement. It becomes a symbol, a heartbeat, proof that the silence can be broken. Within hours, word spreads, not through phones, not through broadcasts, but through footsteps, horses, bicycles, handwritten notes pinned to wooden boards, passed along from town to town. A spark of hope moves faster than any vehicle ever could. By day 10, microgrids begin forming like scattered islands across the country. Small towns rebuild one transformer. A city block reactivates a water pump. A hospital lights a single wing. Each success is fragile, imperfect, prone to failure, but each one matters. Convoys carry analog equipment from one region to another, navigating broken roads without digital maps. Engineers teach civilians how to restore pressure to water systems manually. Hand-crank radios transmit the first government guidance, printed word for word by isolated operators, reading from paper scripts. The nation does not rise in unison. It rises in fragments. But the fragments grow, connect, expand. In the fading light of day 11, a new kind of America begins to take shape. Not the fast, elected America that existed 14 days ago, but a slower, humbler one. An America learning to rebuild with its hands, not its machines. Communities that fractured now seek structure. Communities that cooperated become centers of stability. And everywhere, the question shifts from when will the lights return to how do we prevent this from happening again? People rebuild trust the same way they rebuild infrastructure, slowly, carefully, piece by fragile piece. The psychological transformation becomes undeniable. Nothing feels guaranteed anymore. Not power, not water, not communication, not certainty. And yet, in this stripped-down existence, something older and deeper emerges. Resilience. The illusion of technological invincibility is gone, but the capacity to endure remains. By day 12, America stands somewhere between collapse and rebirth. Engineers reconstruct power lines yard by yard. Farmers plant by the rhythm of the sky. Doctors return to handwritten records. Teachers conduct lessons under open windows. Chalk dust drifting through warm air. The nation slows down, not by choice, but by necessity. And yet, in this slowness, something profound is revealed. Technology failed in a second, but survival was never digital. When day 14 ends, the country is still dark in many regions, still fractured, still wounded, but no longer hopeless. The camera pulls back. A final, quiet panorama of a nation illuminated by scattered pockets of returning light and countless flickering candles. The narrator's voice settles into the dusk. In the end, the EMP did not destroy the United States. It exposed it. It peeled back the layers of noise and speed and showed us the truth, that we had built a civilization so dependent on electricity that we forgot how to live without it. But in the silence that followed, we discovered something stronger than power grids or networks. We discovered that resilience is not wired into circuits. It is carried in people. And as the first lights return to the darkness, one truth remains. Technology can vanish in a single pulse, but the human will to rebuild cannot be turned off.